If you're preparing for the TOEFL listening section, you probably fall into one of two groups. Either you find it fairly manageable, or it feels like an uphill battle. Maybe you understand every word when reading a transcript, but when listening, everything seems too fast. Or maybe you follow lectures well, but still struggle with the tricky questions. I've seen tons of people who couldn't get the score they needed even though their level was advanced. One of my students was a girl who could read academic texts and articles easily, knew almost every word from TOEFL lectures, but when it came to questions, she just blanked out and started answering incorrectly. Another student had difficulty taking notes. If he simply listened to the recording, he could understand pretty well. But when he started writing something down, he couldn't keep up. And while he was able to answer general questions based on his memory, he still needed notes for more detailed questions. Sounds familiar? If so, don't worry, you're not alone. Today I'm going to share 8 essential TOEFL listening tips that will help you improve your score. These aren't the basic just listen more tips. These are the strategies I've compiled in my 10+ years as a TOEFL teacher, and they're also the ones that helped me score 119 on my test day. These are strategies that will actually make a difference. So stay with me until the end, because every single tip here can help you boost your score. Let's get started. Tip number 1 is simulate test conditions in practice. A lot of students practice listening by casually playing a recording, pausing when they don't understand something, and replaying difficult sections. But that's not how the TOEFL works. On test day, you don't get a second chance to hear the lecture, and you definitely can't pause or rewind. So what should you do? When practicing, listen to full lectures and conversations under real test conditions. That means no pausing, no rewinding, and strict time limits for answering questions. This will train your brain to process information quickly and stay focused, reducing stress when you take the actual test. If you need to analyze your performance or want to learn the new words you encountered, you can always come back to the script after you finish answering all the questions. Here's a small tip. Always listen to the recording again at the end of your practice, while reading the transcript of the lecture or conversation at the same time. Write down the words that made you think, "Oh, I wish I knew this word," when you were listening for the first time. Tip number 2, study connected speech. One major reason students struggle with TOEFL listening is that spoken English sounds very different from written English. Native speakers don't say words separately, they connect them. Instead of saying, "What do you want?" a native speaker might say, "What do you want?" Sounds different, right? If you're not used to this, you might feel like words are blending together, making it easy to get lost in the conversation. A good way to improve this skill is by listening to real conversations, TED Talks, podcasts, or even TV shows with natural dialogue. However, since time is usually limited, the best thing you can do is what I mentioned in the first tip. Read the transcript of the lecture or conversation while listening. This is a universal exercise that will not only help you identify new words and understand the reasons for your mistakes, but also allow you to hear how native speakers pronounce words and word clusters. If you're looking for structured practice, I'll also make a video on reduced forms and linking sounds, as these are crucial for TOEFL success. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon not to miss it. Tip number 3, learn idiomatic vocabulary. Idioms are everywhere in English, and TOEFL conversations often include them. If you don't know what an idiom means, you might misinterpret the whole conversation. That's why learning idiomatic expressions is key. A great resource for practicing this is the Lingua TOEFL app. It has an entire section dedicated to idiomatic vocabulary. When you open the app, go straight to the vocabulary section and choose idiomatic vocabulary. You'll learn new words by doing tests, which makes it easier to remember the expressions because you are actively engaging with them. If you don't know an idiomatic expression, add it to the dictionary and review all the words there at the end of your practice. The app also covers academic and campus-related vocabulary, which is extremely useful for TOEFL conversations. After practicing for a while, go to the listening section and take a few tests to check your performance. Now, tip number 4 is predict what's coming. If you can predict what the speaker will say next, you'll have an easier time following along. This skill comes with practice. When listening to lectures or conversations, pay attention to context clues. For example, if a student says, "I didn't finish my homework on time," what do you think the professor will say? Most likely, they'll respond with advice, an extension, or a consequence. By training your brain to anticipate what's coming next, you'll stay more engaged and process information faster. The skill also helps you answer questions more accurately, since you'll already have an idea of what's important in the recording. As I said before, I've been teaching TOEFL for more than 10 years now, and I see that students with exactly the same level of English can get completely different scores, depending on whether or not they know little tips about the test. For example, I know many students who consistently score 22 or 23 on the speaking section because they use templates incorrectly and do not know how to organize their answers effectively. I've also seen students take the test 15 or even 20 times and still not get the score they need. Why? Because they did not analyze what they were doing wrong and kept taking the test, trying to finally win the lottery and get the score they needed. However, the key to successful TOEFL preparation is knowing what you're doing wrong and what you should be doing to score high. So if you have a TOEFL test coming up, click on the link and enroll in our TOEFL course, where I'll share all the tips and tricks that allowed me to score 119 out of 120 and enable my students to get the scores they need in a short period of time. The key feature for those preparing at the last minute is that once you join the course, you'll get access to all the lectures, which means you'll have all the information about the test at your fingertips. So, if your exam is in 2 or 3 days, you'll have everything you need to prepare. Tip number 5, learn to ignore distractors. TOEFL questions are designed to trick you. Sometimes an answer choice will sound correct because it includes words from the lecture, but that doesn't mean it's the right answer. For example, let's say a professor talks about climate change and mentions that some people believe human activity has little impact on global warming. Then you see this answer choice. The professor believes human activity does not contribute to climate change. Sounds familiar, right? But it's actually wrong because it's not what the professor said. It's just something they mentioned. To avoid these traps, always double-check your notes before picking an answer. Make sure the choice actually reflects what was said, not just something that sounds similar. In my one-on-one Zoom lessons, I typically go through 1 or 2 lectures with my students. As we work through the lecture and the questions, I always pause to draw their attention to TOEFL traps. For example, I ask them to look carefully at the answer options. Which one is definitely incorrect? Why? I constantly ask why to ensure they not only answer the question, but also explain their reasoning. This helps them develop a deep understanding of the material, which always comes in handy on test day. You can do the same when practicing on your own. Always ask yourself why as you practice, and you'll see huge improvement. Tip number 6, manage your time. The TOEFL listening section is long. You'll be listening to multiple lectures and conversations back to back, and that can be mentally exhausting. One common mistake students make is spending too much time on a single question. If you're unsure about an answer, don't get stuck. Use the process of elimination to narrow down your options. Make your best guess and move on. Hesitating for too long can cost you valuable time, which you might need for later questions. Tip number 7, train your focus. This might be the most important tip of all. The TOEFL listening section is designed to test your ability to focus for an extended period of time. If your mind starts to wander, even for a few seconds, you could miss key details and struggle with the questions. In my teaching practice, I've noticed that about 40% of students can't stay focused for like 3, 4, or 6 minutes straight. To train your focus, practice active listening. This means fully engaging with the lecture, taking notes, predicting what's coming next, and listening for tone and attitude. If you're busy with all of that, you won't have time to get distracted. This is why I'm always emphasizing that notes are important. Not only do they help you answer questions, but they also allow you to stay focused during the recording. What also works for me is trying to visually imagine what's going on in the lecture or a conversation. Think of it as a movie and try to create an image of what the lecturer is talking about in your head. Finally, tip number 8 is get used to different types of notes. Your note-taking strategy can make or break your listening score. And the way you take your notes largely depends on the material you have at hand. If you're using A4 paper, you have more space, so you might write more details. But if you're using a small whiteboard, you'll need a more compact and structured approach. Learn to take notes in blocks. For example, TOEFL conversations often have 4 main topics, and each of the first 4 questions is linked to one of them. The final question often tests figurative speech. Knowing this and being able to divide information into organized blocks is extremely important for understanding and answering the questions. This is what we teach in the TOEFL course, because with this skill, you'll dissect the listening section easily and consistently get high scores. Mastering TOEFL listening is not just about improving your English. It's about learning how to listen strategically. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any future tips. Good luck with your TOEFL prep, and remember, you're more ready than you think. Bye.